Thanks so much. Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I'm going to ask you to remind me to wiggle my mouse on my screen every minute or so, because apparently there's some AV issues. Yeah, I'm going to trust you. Cool, thank you. No pressure. So, hi everyone, thank you for coming to my talk. In this talk, I'm going to talk about anti-forensic techniques that me and my team see threat actors use in the wild all the time. And I'm going to talk about the threat actors that we've seen using these techniques. This talk is a result of working on multiple incident response engagements over and over again, where we had to resort to creative ways of figuring out what threat actors have done on systems, not being able to rely on the kind of traditional forensic artifacts that we usually would because of the anti-forensic methods that the threat actors were using. This talk doesn't cover all anti-forensics techniques, and it doesn't cover all the ways that you might find evidence of those anti-forensics techniques being in use. These are just the techniques that we have seen being used by threat actors somewhat recently. By somewhat recently, I mean in the past few years. And ways that I found that you can look for evidence of these anti-forensics techniques being used. Unless mentioned otherwise, most of this is going to relate to Windows. This is just because of the nature of the networks that I work on. I haven't found any examples of anti-forensics on macOS. I even spoke to a guy on the Apple CERT team just a few minutes ago and asked him if he knows about any examples, and he also hadn't heard of any. There's going to be a little bit of Linux as well. I started doing cybersecurity in around 2016 when I went to university to do a cybersecurity and digital forensics degree. I was always really interested in digital forensics. I thought it was quite fun and interesting. And when I was looking at the different jobs available in the job market, I thought incident response sounded cool because it sounded like when you're doing IR, the people you're working with actually need you and actually need you to be there. So that was why I went for IR. I did internships at Coinbase, Meta, and Morgan Stanley. And then after graduating, I worked at Meta and KPMG before coming to CrowdStrike. It's funny because it disappeared, like the evidence. For those that don't know, I'm just going to talk briefly about CrowdStrike and my team and the context in which this information is actually relevant. So CrowdStrike makes a product called Falcon, which is an endpoint detection and response agent. That means it's a little program that runs on endpoints and servers on your network and collects information. This information can be used by security teams to figure out what was happening on these devices, and it also prevents bad stuff from happening. Apart from the actual software, our company also has a professional services team. That's what I am part of. Our professional services team does a bunch of stuff, which I will talk about in a second. And we also have a brilliant threat intelligence team, some of who are here today. Hi guys, thanks for being around. And they provide us as the professional services team, as well as our developers and our customers, with information about what threat actors are doing. And they do a bunch of malware analysis, which is super useful because I'm pretty bad at reverse engineering. In terms of the services team, I'm part of the professional services team in general. I mostly work on incident response engagements. This means that we usually come in a post-breach scenario, so the customer has noticed that something has gone wrong on their network or some evidence of something bad happening, and they call us in, and we either already have visibility thanks to them having Falcon or another EDR, or we deploy Falcon and then do an investigation, which I'll talk about in a second. Apart from incident response, we also do other types of engagements that are listed there. I get like a bonus for doing these talks, and I have to include this slide. So let's talk about the incident response lifecycle and the context in which this stuff is actually useful. So when we, as the CrowdStrike team, and it's not just us, most IR consulting teams will have a similar-ish methodology. When we come into a incident, the scenario is usually that there's been some kind of detection or somebody has noticed that something bad has happened. We then try and gain visibility. This is usually through either deploying an EDR tool, such as Falcon. Other teams probably use different EDR tools as well. And then we use that tool to do some analysis and investigation. This analysis and investigation is also greatly helped by collecting so-called forensics packages. We have a forensics package collector called Falcon Forensics Collector, which we deploy on all systems where it's possible. And we use the forensic data from each device to find evidence of compromise on those devices. So we're usually looking for indicators of compromise, which would be evidence of a compromised account doing some activity, maybe some malware, maybe some logs that show what a threat actor has been doing. We then use that evidence to, prevent the malware, for example, from executing by putting, its hash into our prevention mechanism in Falcon. And we use the IOCs to search more broadly across the estate because we are trying to get visibility everywhere. So in a typical incident response scenario where there is no anti-forensics, what a threat actor might do is they might use a specific, let's say, remote access tool on a system. However, when they are using anti-forensic, they might hide that they've been using that access tool on a system. And this talk is about how you can actually find evidence of them hiding that remote access tool, for instance, and using that as an indicator of compromise instead of actually using the evidence of that remote access tool being there in the first place. 7 minutes, 10 slides in. Damn it. I'm going to have to go fast. Right. So the anti-forensics techniques that I'm going to talk about today are file deletion, log deletion and log tampering, bring your own VM, SIEM and security tool corruption, and cloud anti-forensics. I'll go with file deletion first. Bear with me. I know that file deletion is pretty simple and easy, but I think it's worth covering because it's quite relevant and we see all types of threat actors do it. You'll see that some of these techniques I have attributed to specific threat actor groups or threat actors. By the way, you haven't given me a single sign to wiggle my mouse. Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks for watching. I am trusting you. File deletion is what we see loads of threat actors do. So they'll, bring some malware onto a system, run it, and then delete it. Typically, the ways we see them do these kinds of deletions is either just via the Windows GUI, if they've got GUI access, so the graphical interface of the systems that they're on. We often see them deleting stuff for PowerShell, which you'll see why is important in a second. And we sometimes see them use file deletion utilities such as sdelete and a bunch of others. Some ways in which I found finding evidence of deleted files or figuring out how to recover those files are using the $I30 file, which I'll explain in a moment, file carving, looking at PowerShell logs, hence the PowerShell stuff, and execution artifacts. So, first thing is the $I30 file. Now, if you have ever looked at a file, at an image of a system in some forensic software, you'll probably see that, oh no, it's not your fault. Sorry guys, I'm going to have to do this again. Yes, okay. Cool. A $I30 file is a record which is in every directory in an NTFS system, and that record will contain a bunch of information about the files that are in that directory. Now, the nice thing about $I30 is that it stores that information in a bit of a weird data structure. That data structure means that actually you can find evidence of records of files that have been previously deleted. Bear with me. It's awkward, isn't it? Right, there we go. The way you can use this file is you get it off your file system somehow, and there is a bunch of command line tools, such as index parse, which is listed there, or other ones, which you can use to output a nice CSV file, which will have a bunch of lines which include records that say that they have been deleted. Great resource. Most forensics collectors that I've seen around, including open source ones, won't collect this file or the contents of this file. So this is something that you might need to do extra. Also, if you're using a traditional forensics tool and you've got a disk image, in those rare cases that you do, you can also sometimes, depending on the tool, actually just click on the file and it will parse it for you. Probably most people know this, but maybe you don't. In some types of file systems, when files are deleted, the contents of, like on disk, isn't actually overwritten. The contents is still there. There's just a special mark that gets, or a special flag that is set that says that the file, that the place on the disk where that file was can be used. And the contents is still there until the operating system needs to use that space. Deleting a file might still leave it in the so-called slack space of the operating system. What this means is that you can go through this slack space and you can look for the header and footer of a file, or you can use a tool that will do this for you, preferably. And you can sometimes find evidence of deleted files and actually carve those files. So take all of the data in between the start and end of the file, take it out, and then use that as you would any other regular file. And you can use this with all types of files, including files that have forensic data in them, such as Windows event logs, for example. You still there? Cool. We often see threat actors using PowerShell to do stuff, and this includes deleting files. There's two specific places that we've seen threat actors not deleting, even though they are trying to delete the evidence of what they did on a system. Those places are the console host history file, which you can see the path of the file just there. And there's also some Windows event logs called script block logs that log PowerShell execution on a system. And often you'll see threat actors deleting evidence of what they were doing, but not deleting one of these files. So if you have that resource, then you can just look at it and see at least what the threat actor has been deleting. And in this case, let's say that you see that the threat actor has been deleting a specific registry key on a system, and you see that in console host history. You can then go and look at the console host history on all of your systems within your whole environment and maybe find that in the other console host history files, this is happening as well. And then that lets you know that the threat actor has been on this system and you need to investigate what was happening before and after. And you can use that as an IOC or indicator of compromise within itself. Cool. Last one for file deletion is execution artifacts. So I'm not going to go through all of the artifacts that you can use to prove execution on a system. Just there, you can definitely not see the contents, but that is part of a poster from a company called SANS, which is a really great resource. And it just lists a bunch of different places that you can look on a Windows system for evidence that something has been executed. Now, you can use these execution artifacts to look for file wiping utilities being executed. Ones that we see over and over again are sdelete, killdisk, file shredder, bleachbit, and cc cleaner, but we see many, many others. And there are some threat actors now that use multiple different types of file wipers within one case. So we'll see one engagement with loads of different file wipers around. The difference between deleting something just kind of normally and with a file wiper is that the data on the data is actually overwritten in this case, so you can't carve those files. And obviously, if the data has been deleted with a file wiping utility, I haven't come across a case where you're able to get that back. However, you can use the execution of a file wiping utility as an indicator of compromise and look for that on other systems. Windows event logs. Windows event logs are a log source on Windows systems that provide information about what's going on your device. They were found in C Windows System 32 config, and we heavily rely on them in incident response to find evidence of everything from execution to lateral movement. Depends on your logging configuration, but they are very, very valuable. The problem is that threat actors often delete them. But you can, and you can see a bunch of examples of how they are deleted just there. But you can detect them being deleted at the very least through the event logs themselves, also through PowerShell logging, which I've gone over before, and also through the execution, again, which I've gone over before, of the event viewer utility sometimes. Obviously, that in itself isn't proof, but it can be a good indicator that something weird has been going on if a compromised account is executing event viewer. In terms of the event logs, maybe a bit small, but you can see that there is the 104 event log, which shows the system log being cleared, 1102, again, evidence of an event log being cleared, and also there's the 1100 event ID, which shows that the event log service has been shut down. But there are issues. So threat actors may delete event logs, but you might be thinking that's fine, I forward them to my SIEM, whatever. But threat actors can also actually interfere with the event logging service. There was a French guy called Benjamin that wanted to learn C a while ago, and he ended up writing a tool called Mimikatz, which is French slang for cute cat, I believe. And now this tool is used by almost every threat actor out there, as far as I can tell. This tool is interesting from an anti-forensics perspective because it actually has a module called event. This module can either clear the event log or it can patch the function within the event log DLL, event log service DLL, to return before anything happens. So in that case, you're not going to get any event logs written if your threat actor is running this. You also have tools such as invoke phantom. This suspends all the, so if you look at the event log service, it runs under SVC host, and it will just go into SVC host and look at all of the event log service DLLs running under it, and it will kill them and suspend them. No event ID to do with stopping the event log service will be generated, at least in the cases that I've seen. However, the threat actor might do this, but again, forget to, for example, delete console host history, which shows you invoke phantom being run. In which case, you can just look for that. You can also manually modify the event log file. I haven't actually seen this personally, but I've heard it does happen. Modifying your event log isn't that simple. So if you want to do it, you have to stop the event log service, copy the event log file, modify your events, and then recalculate the file header and the chunk headers within your event log file. However, apparently it does happen. On Linux systems, we also see threat actors setting the hist file to dead null or using the unset hist file command. Sorry, that looks weird. That should not be in that font. These are two separate things. It's not just one long command. Anyway, when this is done, commands don't get logged in bash history. And there's also some really crazy tools that are used for event log record unreferencing, such as event log edit. I'll quickly explain this one. So event log edit is part of is a tool that was found in the Shadow Brokers leaks, if anybody remembers that. And this one is quite cool because you can see that the record header here, so this is a unchanged event log, this is a changed event log. Basically, you set the size here in the event record header to be larger, and just to overwrite the next event log. So in this case, as a forensic analyst, you're just blind to one event log not being there, right? There are ways to detect this. If you take the EVTX file, there's a company called Fox IT that made a thing that can detect this, and you just run this script, I think called dander spritz EVTX over the event log file. And yeah, you can detect it, but in general, yeah, kind of hard to find if you're not looking for it specifically. Other issues that you may have is that your threat actor has just encrypted your SIEM. So we see this actually somewhat often. So there are a few scenarios. One that we've seen is that there's threat actors doing encryption at the virtual disk level. So if you've got some virtualized infrastructure, maybe some systems running on an ESXi, for example, the threat actor will run some ransomware that will just encrypt every VMDK file that is running. In that case, if your SIEM is one of those VMDK files, yeah, you're screwed. Not great. We've also seen threat actors specifically delete the data partitions on a SIEM system. We actually never found how they did this specifically because there wasn't any evidence. And also we've seen some threat actors actually change logging configurations and security tooling. So for example, emitting high severity events. For example, if there were some, if high severity events were sent to a specific email address, just removing that email address or changing it. In that case, if you've got auditing of that, you could look for that. But I don't think it's rare to see that. And then, you can detect it because your SIEM doesn't work. Cool. So next one is bring your own VM. So this is a anti-forensic technique where threat actors will run a virtual machine or a container on the host that they are currently working on. So in this situation, you can see usually some kind of evidence of virtualization programs being executed. Maybe downloading of some VMware tooling, which you could maybe go to your browser history, that kind of thing. You might be able to find that kind of thing, and then also just the execution of those tools. If you are lucky enough to have a disk image and you're able to carve files, I have been in situations where I can see that they've executed some virtualization stuff, and so I carve files and I find a VMDK file in the in Slack space. Then you can take that VMDK file. Now, theoretically, if it's still intact, you could take that VMDK file itself and run that in forensic software, and if you're super lucky, it'll work and you'll be able to get artifacts of what was happening within the VM itself. Personally, haven't come across that, but I guess in theory it is possible. However, something that you can do, and something that I was able to do on one case, is use string searching to look for indicators of compromise within the VMDK file. And while you can't prove that something has happened, like execution, for instance, just through strings, you can see, for example, strings of maybe an exfiltration utility, and you can maybe also see evidence of the threat actor grabbing a bunch of files via SMB from the host system, then creating a zip file, then running some virtualization stuff, and then that VM having, for example, like S3 browser or maybe some other exfiltration utility strings within it, and then you can go to the network logs and maybe confirm that there was some exfiltration from the VM within the machine that you're investigating. Cloud stuff. So I haven't worked on that many cases that have cloud components in them. However, when we do work on such cases, in terms of forensics, it really depends on the logging configurations of your customers or logging configuration within your network. I think quite a lot of the time, if there's no logging, you're going to be pretty blind. A lot of the time in the cloud, the threat actor will spin up some kind of cloud resource. So I'm a bit biased to AWS, presumably because Azure customers go with Microsoft, etc. But for example, a threat actor might spin up an EC2 instance, do a bunch of bad stuff on it, and then just delete it. In those cases, as far as I know, the evidence is gone. You're not going to get anything, really. You may find evidence of them spinning up the EC2 instance and maybe tearing it down. One other issue that we've come across is threat actors using resources that use auto-scaling. This means that when the resources aren't in use, they are just torn down. In those cases, again, once stuff is gone, it's gone. Honestly, don't know if that was used as an anti-forensics technique or if it was just what they used. Another thing is disabling or deleting logs. In terms of detection, again, depends on logging availability. If they're enabling auto-scaling, there's the create auto-scaling group and enable auto-scaling group type of logs that you can look for, or delete trail logs for deleting cloud trail logs. I guess you might notice that your AWS will get smaller if they deleted all your logging. Thank you for laughing. Cool. So, last thing. Who actually uses anti-forensics? So, all of these techniques that I've been describing, and especially the basic ones such as event log deletion and file deletion, I'm not actually attributing to any specific threat actor because we see so many different threat actors as well as unattributed unattributed incidents where we see this happen. However, there are three specific threat actors that I wanted to speak about that we see using anti-forensics a lot. Those are Vice Spider, Light Basin, and Scattered Spider. So, first one is Vice Spider. Vice Spider is a e-crime group. You might also know them as Vice Society. If you've ever looked at their data leak site, it looks like GTA. It's quite cool. It's all pink. Hence the logo with the car, I guess. So in terms of the anti-forensics techniques that this group uses, number one is deletion via PowerShell through things like remove item or reg delete. Also removing console host history.txt or the contents of specific folders such as app data local temp. Also deleting registry values that would usually have forensic values such as typed past or run MRU. as well as the destruction of the SIEM data partition. So in general, when working with this threat actor, you'll come across systems where a lot of the registry has been wiped, especially the interesting registry keys. You don't have console host history. You don't have the contents of a lot of folders because they've just been deleted. You don't have a SIEM. And yeah, you don't have like basically anything to investigate. So what do you do in that case? Let me introduce you to my favorite forensic artifact, the RDP bitmap cache. So the RDP bitmap cache is, I'll explain in a second, but you can see here an extract of it. This is from a Vice Spider case, although I have to say that this group of commands, I'm not sure if you can see them at all, but they basically are doing all the things that are explained above. So for example, like deleting various registry keys, etc. So the RDP bitmap cache, sorry, just to finish off on that thought, this seems to be a group of commands that isn't just used by Vice Spider, so just in case anybody is using this talk and this screenshot as a way to attribute something to Vice Spider specifically, don't, because it looks like there is various threat actor groups that are actually using this exact sequence of commands. You can especially tell that it's this exact sequence of commands because there's actually no space in between this pipe and stop process just there, which is means it's just being copy-pasted out of somewhere. Anyway, RDP bitmap cache. There is a bunch of files at that location listed in step 1. So these files are generated when you have an RDP session on host A, when you've got an RDP session from host A to host B. They are the cache files, as the, name suggests, of the RDP session. I've heard, I don't know if it's true, that these cache files are generated by where the mouse is traveling in the RDP session itself. And apparently, as humans, when we type something or we read something, sometimes we use the mouse to follow along. So that means that anything juicy in an RDP session may be visible in the RDP bitmap cache. But the problem with this artifact is that it's just a bunch of little tiles, little cache tiles, that don't show that much of the content of the screen. What you can do is you can parse these files using 2 tools, one from the French cert, one from the German cert. For some reason, they love BMC. You can use one to get the tiles and then the other one to kind of arrange the tiles in a puzzle, like you can see there. As you can imagine, this is a really time-consuming forensic artifact to look at. However, if you are working as a consultant or you're working with non-technical people, then it's a really good way to show somebody visually what a threat actor was actually doing on your system, because you can see, you can find what is essentially a screenshot of what the threat actor was seeing themselves. I don't think this is that funny, but my friends made me put it in. Yeah, you guys won. Cool. Right, next one is Basin. Basin is an activity cluster that's been targeting telcos all around the world for a while, I think since 2016. One of the issues that my team has encountered when investigating Basin is that they use a custom tool called log bleach. Now, log bleach deletes log entries on Unix systems. The problem with log bleach is that it will only delete the logs that are actually related to the threat actor's activity, which means that you end up with a system where there's been malicious activity, but all of the logs from that activity specifically, aren't there anymore. Hard to investigate. Cool. Cool. Scattered spider. You may know them as well as like Okta something, or something Okta if you're Microsoft. They are a group that we've been, hammered with really recently. It's a group of teenage boys in the US and middle-aged men in Russia. They primarily start their activity with social engineering, which, as everybody knows here, is probably one of the most difficult things to prevent and protect against. They'll often call up their help desks of the companies that they are trying to target, and they will have some kind of pretext like, oh, I've got an important presentation or something and I really need my username and password. They'll look up open source information of the victims that they're trying to impersonate, which is available online, and use that to convince the help desk people to reset their MFA number, for example, or give them credentials in some other way. Once Scattered Spider is in your systems, they move really fast and they do loads and loads of things. They also seem to know their way around lots of corporate SaaS software, so they know Workday way better than I ever will, for example. When working on these cases, you work with a lot of interesting log sources that I haven't worked with before, such as, SaaS logs. But they use a lot of anti-forensics tools, which is interesting because they don't tend to try and be particularly quiet. In fact, you can really tell it's a bunch of teenagers because they will add just a folder name called fuck you. And it's why? Why are you doing this? Anyway, but along with that, which I would say is a pretty good IOC and is very obvious that who's doing things if they're doing that. But they also use a lot of anti-forensics. One thing that they use is bring your own VM extensively. The case I was talking about earlier is to do with Scattered Spider. They also end up using a lot of cloud resources that they either then delete or are in auto-scaling groups, so are just deleted for them automatically. They also use BleachBit as well as a bunch of other file wiping utilities. And we've also seen them using two tools called Cover My Ass and Moonwalk. I guess from the back you might not be able to see that, so maybe I'll read it out. So Cover My Ass is a tool that finds which log files exist on the system and then lets you choose which ones you want to erase. The files are overwritten with random data, so it's hard to recover them. And then Moonwalk will save the logs in the pre-exploitation state, and then once you're done doing your stuff, you can reset the logs to the state before you were doing stuff, leaving zero traces apart from the execution of Moonwalk, which is a pretty good IOC. In terms of conclusion, there's a principle in classical forensics called low cards exchange principle, which states that every contact leaves a trace. Even though it might seem a bit hopeless when your threat actors have deleted all of your data, there's still things that you can look for, and you can at least find evidence that a threat actor has been on a system, because you can sometimes find evidence of the threat actor using anti-forensics techniques. Unless they've deleted your SIEM. At least you know they deleted your SIEM, right? So, that was it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Questions?
There's a question over there.
Which one do you want first?
And there.
That one? Okay, I'm running.
That one, sure. Sorry, no offense.
Hi, thanks for the talk, great talk. Just a quick question on attributing like different APT groups and sort of e-crime groups. Do you ever see any sort of groups attempting to mimic other groups? And if so, what are some of like the differentiating factors that you use to sort of say, oh, hey, this is this APT trying to mimic this ATP? Or APT, sorry.
Yeah, good question. In terms of attribution, like I don't really do attribution myself. Like if I'm working a case and it feels like this threat actor or that threat actor because it looks similar to another case, I will talk to my intel team and like tell them, and then they will tell me, no, you're wrong, usually. And yeah, in terms of how they do their attribution, I think it's based on a lot of different factors, not just the forensics evidence, but also information they have from, you know, scanning the dark web, access to threat actor forums, you know, all of these different things. Yeah, I mean, attribution in threat intelligence is a whole topic, and to be honest, I don't really know how to do it myself. But yeah, good question. There was one on right the other side of the room, and then one there as well, just at the back there.
Yep, the hand, cool, perfect.
If somebody on that side of the room can pick another question as well.
Hiya, thanks for a great talk. I've got two questions. I suppose the first question is, in terms of the volume of endpoints, what does a typical incident that you guys respond to look like? And the second question then is, when somebody has leveraged a cloud provider, do you find in general that the cloud provider will work with you, or do they tend to view you as competition and kind of not help you so much?
Okay, so first question, what is the volume of endpoints? So it's like, how big are the networks that we usually work on? Well, like anything, like we work, I mean, like smallest around 10K and up. Like, I mean, sometimes there are smaller ones, but like upper limit, honestly, I'm not sure. Like, we've worked on some pretty big ones. And especially when you end up with like hybrid environments where you've got a bunch of cloud resources, like, yeah, it can be big. And, in terms of sorry, what was your second question? Oh, the cloud provider, if they work with us. I mean, I haven't come across a situation when a cloud provider has seen us as competition. And in terms of, and I'm not sure, we've definitely had scenarios where we needed some additional logs for some kind of software, maybe cloud-based software, and we've gone to our customer has gone to their SaaS provider, and then they've gotten more logs. In terms of cloud providers themselves, I haven't come across that, I think. But I mean, in general, we wouldn't be the people interfacing with the cloud provider, it would be our customer. And like, yeah, I mean, if you're a big customer of any company, like, yeah, you'll probably get good treatment. So it depends. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. There was one more here. I don't know if we've got time for it. Oh, yeah, sure.
When looking at bring your own VM, what's the kind of goal that an attacker has there? Because obviously a VM is like virtual. You don't have access to the host machine. So what do they actually do with that VM?
Well, as far as I know, I mean, so if you've got an EDR running on your host system, it won't be running inside the VM. So, you know, I mean, so there won't be telemetry from there. I think we've seen VMs used for exfil a bunch. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like they can download a VM that has a specific tool set in it already, and then they just don't have to bother with getting tools from other places, to be honest. There's also that. But yeah, I mean, we have really little visibility into what's going on inside these virtual machines, so yeah, Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I can guess, but it is just a guess because I haven't found one where we can actually take a look at what happened. No more questions. Thanks, guys.